Welcome, 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 everyone. This is Answer the Call. It's a whole virtual presentation about increasing Black representation in medical research. I'm so pleased and honored to be your host today. I'm Asia Chandler from Irving One. I'm an on-air personality, and joining us today, we have some amazing Black women with us. Yes, we want to invite you all as our panelists. So let's welcome MARISA SPANN. She is a Herbert Irving Associate Professor. She's also with Columbia University and Vagelos College of Physicians and Surgeons. Welcome, 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 MARISA SPANN. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing
Good,
great.
good, good. We also have Dr. TONII GEDIN joining us. She's with the Arundel County Department of Health. How are you doing today, Miss Dr. GEDIN? How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Good, good, good. And we also have TRASHAUN POWELL joining us. She is a preeclampsia survivor. She's also the Preeclampsia Foundation Take 10 for Preeclampsia Research Ambassador, and she's with Maternal Health. She's a maternal health advocate. So thank you so much for joining us today, TRASHAUN. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So the purpose of this event today is to share on the reason that we have to answer the call. All right. So we welcome everyone, myself, along with Urban One and the Boroughs Welcome Fund, the Preeclampsia Foundation, and the Anne Arundel County Health Department. We're all connecting our communities together because we need to have this discussion about increasing the Black experience in medical research. So the whole purpose of this is to kind of just aim our focus on increasing our voices and to discuss the need for this research so that we can aim at possibly finding a cure and helping everyone have the knowledge they need to kind of fight these diseases and disorders directly that are affecting the minority populations, and including the discussions that we need to have about preeclampsia research. So let's get this discussion started. You ready, ladies? You ready? Okay.
Ready?
All right. I'm going to start with you, Dr. SPANN. So talk to us a little bit about hypertension. We know that that's rampant in the Black community, right? So, but talk to us specifically about blood pressure related conditions for Black women, especially during pregnancy.
Yes. So we all know that blood pressure is really one of the major main vital signs that the doctor would look at. And what many people don't know is that Black women are at twice more likely to actually end up with a high blood pressure condition during childbearing years. And in particular, during pregnancy, about 1 in 10 women, so about 5 million worldwide, will actually end up with a hypertensive condition during pregnancy. And that can really sort of look like a couple of different things. One, you could have sort of chronic hypertension that you already had during prior to pregnancy. You can develop a gestational hypertension. And then one of the main things we're here to talk about today is preeclampsia, which is just characterized as high blood pressure, as well as a host of another sort of symptoms related to other organs. And all of these really can be pretty significant in terms of risk for mortality and morbidity for the woman, the pregnant woman themselves, but also for their infant. And for preeclampsia specifically, Black women in the US are 60% higher rate of potentially being diagnosed with this. So pretty serious stuff.
Right, exactly. So, but talk to us specifically about why research in particular with Black women is so important.
Yeah, research with Black women is really important because, one, they're at greater risk for these conditions, and they're more likely to actually have significant morbidity or potentially die from these conditions, which is different from their white counterparts, as well as other populations, and also, this research is very sparse, particularly for Black women, because Black women tend to not want to be engaged and have some concerns about the research community. And so while we are at greater risk for these disorders, we are less likely to participate in the research, which means that specific unique factors that would put us at greater risk are really unknown in terms of treatment.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. GEDIN, talk to us a little bit about your vision. Like, what is your vision for maternal health?
Yeah, so as the health officer for the Anne Arundel County Health Department, for me, it's really important that everyone has an equal chance at a healthy pregnancy and a healthy birth, right?
Mhm.
Everyone, when they're making that decision to expand their family and have children, what is that experience like? Is everyone listened to? Does everyone have the education and the resources that they need? And as a local health department, I really see our role in that as something that we should be pulling people together, stakeholders and others, the community as well, and providing that education. But really getting to a place where we don't have these disparities that are race based, right? Like there are ways and things that we can be doing to make sure that we don't have such health inequities in particular communities. And Black women in particular in the state of Maryland have worse birth outcomes than their counterparts, their white counterparts, and even your Hispanic counterparts. And so we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to provide the right resources and to let people know that these disparities exist and ask them what they would like us to do about it, right? What should we be doing about it? And how can we come together as a community to address these issues?
So, but how would you like to see the state of things in Anne Arundel County specifically?
Yeah, I would like to see um, figuring out ways that we can increase the trust, right? What Dr. Spann was just speaking on with people not always having trust in institutions and systems that
Right.
have historically and currently treated them different, marginalized certain groups. How do we increase that trust with our healthcare institutions in the county? How do we increase that trust with our health department so that when we say something, that people take it seriously, that they see us as a trusted voice, that they come to us with concerns, and do the same with their providers, that they feel empowered and they feel comfortable voicing their concerns and know what to do if they feel like that concern is not being taken seriously. And so for Anne Arundel County, I'd like to create an environment where that's possible.
Absolutely, absolutely. And talk to us a little bit about where that vision is not realized at the moment.
Yeah, I think when we speak to the community, right, we know that the trust isn't there yet. We know that we still have a lot of work to do. We know that people still have negative experiences based on their race, based on their education, based on their socioeconomic status, language spoken, et cetera, that they're dealing with when they're going into offices. We know that access is not equal for everyone, that barriers exist to getting into care, be it the times that appointments are offered, if you're looking for a provider that may look like you or come from your same culture. These things, we know people have trouble in navigating systems, insurance, all of the above, even transportation to appointments, frequency of appointments. Sometimes during pregnancy, there are a lot of appointments, and there can be a lot more if you're high risk.
Right.
And so everybody's access to healthcare is not equal. And then we see these inequitable outcomes as a part of that and a result of that. And so those are the things that we'd like to continue to work on.
Okay. All right. Oh, again, we have TRASHAUN Powell joining us today. Now, she's a preeclampsia survivor. For many of us who aren't affected by this, we're like, what exactly is preeclampsia? So let's start there. Like, let's break it down and talk to us or talk to me and other Black women. Why should we be very, very concerned, and why should we join the fight? Talk to us. TRASHAUN. Yes. As a survivor, talk to us.
Thank you. I was trying to get myself off mute.
Oh.
Are we able to pull up the slide deck?
Yes, we're able to pull up the slide deck, but just talking to us like, yeah, there you go.
There it is. Thank you. And so preeclampsia, I will start. One, I want to say thank you so much to Dr. Spann, because you literally opened up the doors for me to even start to talk about why preeclampsia is so incredibly important. It's important because it happened to me. I will say that. And that it's not something that we often talk about. It's not something that we typically hear until we are diagnosed. And that is something that I do want to talk about. For me, I developed HELP syndrome, which is a severe variant of preeclampsia. And I had not heard of HELP syndrome. I heard of preeclampsia, but not HELP syndrome until I was diagnosed. And on the next few slides, I'll talk a little bit about what preeclampsia is, why you should want to know about this, why this is a call to action to every Black woman and also birthing person, and how we should take the charge from there. And so on our next slide, people need to understand like what preeclampsia is and really why it's so critical. We all know that women are dying to have babies. And if they survive this, they have trauma. And the trauma is really coupled with horrible birthing experience. And again, this is important that survivors know this and now survivors advocate. And I want my community to be uplifted and empowered. And I will echoing Dr. Spann's comments, preeclampsia really is caused by a dysfunction, as you see on the slide here, a dysfunction in the placenta that really causes a disconnect between the needs of the mom and also the needs of the baby. And so you'll see here in this diagram is that preeclampsia often presents itself as a persistent high blood pressure, and that only develops during pregnancy, but also it can continue up to 6 weeks in the postpartum period. It's often diagnosed through, again, protein in your urine, severe features during pregnancy, blood clotting, liver functioning, kidney failure, such as what I had also had, pulmonary edema, headaches, and just visual disturbances that really won't go away. And so on the next slide, I'll talk about a little bit more about what it really does to our bodies. And so preeclampsia, it also impacts our organs. So the repercussions for mom and baby may look very different than ways that's shown above here. And so again, many people have heard of preeclampsia that can occur before eclampsia, but there are other hypertensive disorders of pregnancy that preeclampsia can affect. There are those like HELP syndrome, which is also what I had, eclampsia. And in the next few slides, I'll talk mostly about HELP syndrome, which is what I was diagnosed as, again, as a severe variant of preeclampsia. And HELP syndrome, which is HELLP, it stands for hemolysis, elevated liver enzymes, and low platelets. It is a life-threatening pregnancy complication. I need to say that. It is a life-threatening pregnancy complication. And it's usually considered to be a severe variant of preeclampsia. However, early diagnosis is critical because serious illness and even death can happen in almost 25% of cases. And so eclampsia, which is at the end, eclampsia is a very serious complication of pregnancy, and it's often characterized by one or more seizures during pregnancy or in the postpartum period. And eclampsia is usually treatable if appropriate interventions are taken. If not, unfortunately, eclampsia can result in coma, brain damage, and possibly maternal and or infant death. And so all of these named above are hypertensive disorders of pregnancy. So again, I ask, why are we not talking about this? Or is it because of stigma? Is it because of fear? Is it because maybe trauma? And so again, over the next few slides, I want to further invite you to hear my experience with HELP syndrome and how it's impacted me. And so you'll see on this slide, these 3 images are what you see here, but it didn't start out that way. And so I'll briefly mention at 6 months pregnant, I wasn't feeling the best. I called my doctor to find out, what was going on. It was in the dead of winter in January. And he said that there's a stomach bug going around, but I had a headache that wouldn't go away. I couldn't see 2 feet in front of me. I was vomiting uncontrollably. Mm-hmm. He said, maybe we can see you in a few days. I said, okay. He said, get some rest. No problem. But rest was not on the menu for me. Unfortunately, 2 or 3 hours passed after that, and I could no longer breathe. So we went to the nearest emergency room. They ran a series of tests. Initially, they thought it was my gallbladder, but it wasn't. They thought that it was a stomach bug, but it wasn't. In the next few minutes, you've seen doctors being very frantic. You've seen nurses being frantic as well, wondering what's happening. One of the doctors said to me, do you know the Lord? Start to pray. I asked him, what is happening to me? And he said, "You have HELP syndrome. We are just trying to save you, but your baby will not survive." At that point, I was 23 weeks pregnant, going into an unplanned emergency C-section, and I did not or could not fathom what just happened in a matter of hours. And so the next day, my daughter, Mia Jane Powell, was born, 1 pound, 1 ounce. At birth, she spent 2 days in the NICU. And unfortunately, she passed away on January 5th due to complications of HELP syndrome and also severe prematurity. And so I share that with you because what you see on this slide is literally what urged me to become the advocate that I am today, and also to really take that next step in providing my story, providing my information for researchers to really find a cure. And on the next slide is where you'll see is that we have fun too. We have fun. We also say that we put the fun in fundraising, but it's really more about advocacy. It's really more about a call of action. And so I'm asking you all to join me in that call of action on the next slide to the Preeclampsia Foundation's Take 10, which is our call to action. I'll end with this, is that Alice Walker, the author of The Color Purple, says that healing begins where the womb was made. And in talking to other survivors, I really realized that I was not alone. And I thought I was, but I wasn't. And we just have to talk about this stuff. We really do. I mean, too long it remains in the shadows. And we just really can't be a super woman and walk away. I mean, there were physical changes that happened to my body. There was an increase in my protein in my urine. I had elevated blood pressure for weeks, for months after I, was discharged from the hospital. And I just wasn't told about why this happened in a matter of hours. And connecting with other survivors, I really found the importance of research, and that all of this information and me sharing really ultimately leads to finding a cure. So again, I say that this is extremely important for women of childbirthing age, but also grandmothers who have experienced this, because sometimes they may have called it toxemia, but it's preeclampsia.
All right. Oh, thank you so much for sharing your story. I have so many questions. Dr. Spann, talk to us a little bit about what an intergenerational approach to biomedical research would look like. What would be the significance of that? And I mean, is this genetic? Is this hereditary? Talk to us, explain it to us just a little bit.
Yeah, well, so if I take the dyadic or the intergenerational approach, one of the goals of the work that I do is when I'm working with pregnant persons, I'm not just looking at sort of what's happening with the pregnant person. I'm also looking at what's happening with the fetus. And particularly when we think about cardiovascular function, there really is sort of an interaction and an exchange. And we know from research that, mom's blood pressure, mom's cardiovascular function is going to sort of provide also sort of signals to the fetus as well. And when we think about, sort of that next generation and risk of hypertension and preeclampsia, we also want to sort of be thinking about ways to sort of mitigate this intergenerationally. And for example, the children of pregnant persons who have hypertension can also be at, increased risk for cardiovascular conditions, as well as obviously the pregnant person, as well as a host of other, severe and significant things.
So, but is it something that's passed down from generation to generation? Have we determined that yet?
So, and I'll let others speak as well, but sort of the risk is multifactorial. There's genetic components, but there's also, obviously there's also social factors. And this is one of the reasons why we need more Black women to engage in this research, because there's a lot we don't know about why are they at increased risk, right? Because they're not really, in sort of a lot of the existing studies. But, there, in terms of sort of the next generation and cardiovascular risk, like I said, there's an interaction between the mom, the pregnant woman person, and their fetus, where, you do have sort of signals and priming and an interaction of sort of how the pregnant person's cardiovascular system is sort of engaging, and then how the fetal system is then developing. And so again, it's a combination and multifactorial, and we want to continue this work so we can know sort of what proportions are associated with what, so we can start to think about sort of treatment and prevention.
Right. Okay. So we talk about how this affects Black women more than anyone else. Do we have like an idea specifically about statistics at all? Like the breakdown of the numbers, how much it affects us greater than other women? Anyone can answer this question. I'm sorry.
Yes, well, I shared some numbers earlier and others chime in, but in terms of preeclampsia, again, there's a 60% higher rate for Black women compared to their white counterparts. And then for hypertensive disorders, sort of 1 in 10, there's increased risk, sort of regardless of ethnicity, and Black women in particular are twice as likely to end up with a hypertensive condition compared to white counterparts.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. GEDIN, let's talk to you for a little bit. When we talk about community engagement and we talk about solutions for maternal and infant health, especially infant health disparities, what would be your ideal plan for communities to get more involved, if you will?
Yeah, so I think here in Arundel County, we're taking a couple of different approaches. So we have a maternal and infant health task force, and lived experience has to be a part of that task force, right? We can't only include professionals who are working in that space. Right. And so for us, one of the things that we did is this task force is one of the initiatives I started as health officer that we created a little over a year ago. And started with listening sessions. So having community listening sessions, both virtually and then going out into the community and asking people and sharing. We did something called the data walk, right? Where we actually shared, here are the statistics that we can share for either the state of Maryland, the country, the Anne Arundel County statistics that we can share. A lot of that has to be suppressed because the numbers can be small, but sharing with folks, here are the conditions. So exactly what Ms. Powell spoke to. What are the preeclampsia numbers and what is that disparity in Anne Arundel County, right? What we found in having those conversations with the community is that many families felt like there were so many things about pregnancy that they didn't know before they were pregnant. There was an assumption around what women or families or birthing people knew about pregnancy that was not shared beforehand, right? So even if you were planning a pregnancy, having these conversations with your provider, a lot of things were brand new as you started to talk to your OB, right? So that having those conversations with providers and being able to take that with the community, and then take that information back to providers to say, hey, this is what we're seeing. This is what the community is speaking to. And so the co-chair of that committee with myself is Dr. Monica Jones, who's an OBGYN with one of the hospitals here in the county, Luminous Health. And she would come to those meetings, right? Open and willing to hear what the community thought about their experiences as they were giving birth. So the listening sessions were one way to do it. We also have been sharing that those data walk slides and thinking about, so all of the work that Dr. SPANN does, right, is fantastic. And people like myself try to consume all of that to figure out what we should be doing in the community and understanding conditions better. But then we also have to break it down for community members in a way that's digestible and understandable, right? Because it can be very technical. I'm used to looking at a lot of graphs, but what does it mean? Right. Sharing data in a more friendly way and thinking of it similar to an art galleries, right? So these are huge posters with pictorials and ways for people to digest it, to understand what's happening, and give us their feedback. So now we've taken that, distilled it down a little bit smaller, and are sharing that survey and those questions. Tell us what you'd like to see us do. Share your experience with us if you're comfortable doing so. So the listening sessions turned into a different way to have a QR code and a small card for providers and other community-based organizations and others to give out, so we can continue to collect that information. And then I think the final piece for us will be creating a community advisory board, right? So an advisory board that is really, as we talk about solutions from a county perspective, How does this sound to you? What would you like to see? And engaging with that task force in a way that is not that the power dynamic is equal and shared, and not, we're going to tell you what we're going to do for you, but tell us what you'd like to see us do. Tell us how we can work with you. Tell us where we're getting it wrong. Tell us where we're getting it right. That's the way that we would like to engage with communities, because that lived experience, listening to Ms. Powell's story, is 10 times more powerful than me walking you through the data, right? And talking to you as the health officer, but understanding how it affects people's real lives, what the outcomes are. And so having community members bring voices and life and that qualitative, right, perspective to all of the wonderful numbers that we were able to provide is so critically important, and important for us to understand where we're just where it's not working. Small things, like they would say, there's a lot of magazines in OBGYN office. I don't need to read people. Where's the information about conditions, right? Where's the information? And it was something so small that I never really thought about when I was pregnant with my children. Of course, I noticed it, but I'm on my phone or doing something else. But it is an opportunity to provide more education. And so as a health department, how do we go out into the community and provide more education? How are we getting it to the trusted voices? That's the other thing that we really like to do. If you don't want to hear from me, or you don't want to hear from Dr. Spann, or is there someone you trust? How can we get that information out to trusted messengers in the community so that they can also share this message, or at least share with you, here's where you can go for more information. And so engaging community members to outreach to others, or to be empowered to share this information. But a lot of it is meeting people where they are, right? We'll come to your meeting, we'll talk to you, versus, hey, can you come to us? People got a lot going on, and it is, it's tough sometimes, right, to make all of that happen in the evening with all of your commitments, or to even join a Zoom to give us your feedback. So how can we engage where you are?
Right. Absolutely. So if you're just joining in, we are answering the call. We're here today with our panelists. This is a virtual event that is sponsored by Bureau's Welcome Fund, along with Urban One. We're here to talk to preeclampsia survivors. We're also here to talk to physicians in the field. We're here to just connect the community with answers and have you ask questions. So we do encourage everyone, if you're chiming in, to please feel free to drop any questions that you may have in the chat, and we'll try to get to them as quickly as possible. But welcome to answer the call. If you need more information, you can always go to www.preeclampsia.org. And if you'd like to register, just hit /registry, because we need to amplify your voice in preeclampsia research. And just take 10 minutes to share childbirth stories with researchers by joining the Preeclampsia Registry today. Again, that's www.preeclampsia.org/registry. I'm your host. I'm Asia Chandler from Urban One. And again, we have joining us Dr. TONII GEDIN, we have Dr. MARISA SPANN, and we have preeclampsia survivor TRASHAUN Powell. So thank you again if you're just tuning in. We're going to keep the conversation going. Dr. GEDIN, you shared with us your vision with having the community get more involved. Can you tell us a little bit about where your passion comes from? Because when we see you talk about it, when we hear you talk about it, you have a lot of conviction in your voice. So many other options in the medical field. Why was this one something that kind of resonated with you?
Probably for a couple of different reasons. So I think one is my career choice, just to be in public health and to try to serve the most vulnerable populations, and working with marginalized communities has been something that I've always wanted to do, but specifically because I used to be an ICU nurse, right? So once upon a time, that was what I did. And I felt like people were so sick, but they didn't really understand why they were that sick, or their families were surprised. And I was like, well, this is kind of the course that would happen with if you've had hypertension for this long, or if your diabetes is uncontrolled. So I really wanted to know what's happening on the other end of the care spectrum. And then for this issue, particularly Black maternal health, I have my own birth experience, right? Unfortunately, I had a colleague say to me once, every Black woman knows someone with a story. I had twins that were delivered at 26 weeks, nothing that could have been prevented, but that experience, being on that side as a patient, really taught me a lot. and the things that come along with that, the stress of that. The time my twins are 8 now and they're doing wonderful. But even just listening to Miss Powell's story, right? I know what that's like. I know the fear that comes with, okay, this is happening. We're delivering. Now what? And all of the potential complications that can come. So anytime I can reach back and share that information, but also I see it as my job as a public servant, right? As a part of the health department. My job is to highlight where disparities exist and to figure out how we can pull together groups. The health department doesn't offer, this health department doesn't offer OBGYN services, right? But that doesn't stop us from being able to educate. It doesn't stop us from being able to bring those partners together to say, hey, what are we missing? Where are the gaps? How can we do better? And so I think for me, it's been understanding what it means as a Black mother and someone who's had their own birth experience, but also understanding there's so much more that we can be doing, and knowing that with all of my education and training and resources, that it's still terrifying. And I can only imagine what it's like if you don't have those things. And so how can we bring more information to more people is critically important for me.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Dr. Spann, same question.
Sorry, just a minute to get off mute. Yeah, and I will say this session today is really resonating with me too. I will say, one of the things that we know Black women are also at risk for is having a preterm delivery, and that was something that I know going into my pregnancy with my son, I was so fearful of. Probably too worried that I was causing myself sort of more stress, right, by worrying about it. And ultimately, he was born term, but just sort of these things and stories that we hear, and there's so many unknowns about why for Black women that it's still scary, and it does sort of motivate this work that I'm doing, as well, because I really do want to focus on medical conditions that, are affecting the Black community. So, I can sort of help start to understand, and fill that gap of, okay, why are we more at risk for having children who are preterm? And then similarly, I do want to sort of support that next generation and offspring development. Are there common mechanisms between, the pregnant person and their child that we can sort of help mitigate early, even, when they're still in the womb?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now, TRASHAUN, again, so many people are chiming in because they're saying thank you for sharing your story. We have Brian Hart who chimed in, and we also have Olivia. I can't read her last name, but they all say thank you so much for sharing your story. It takes a lot to share those personal experiences. Tell us, at one point, did you realize that you needed to share your voice? You needed your story to be heard, and you wanted to share it with others so that other people could join in the fight?
So when I was pregnant, I had 5 friends who were pregnant with me. We all got married at the same time. We got engaged at the same time, and we all got pregnant at the same time. And so as a friend group, we were excited. We shared, oh, you're pregnant. Oh, you're pregnant. Everyone was excited. We were due. I was due in May. Another friend was due in July, August, and September. We shared everything up until when my husband sent a group chat and said, TRASHAUN is in the ICU. At that moment, I couldn't share anymore. I became the sad friend. I became the friend that wasn't really invited to baby showers, nor did I want to go. But we shared everything up into that moment and then we didn't share anymore. And that was the moment for me when I did the deep dive about what is preeclampsia, what is HELLP syndrome, and who is it impacting, and to see that it's impacting Black women and we're not sharing our stories. That is when I knew that I must share this information. And I continue to share it with my friends. I continue to share it with my family. And that's when I learned that my great grandmother had died in childbirth, having my great grandmother's brother. No one shared that. And when I had asked my aunt, why didn't anyone share this? And she said, that's just something that we don't talk about. But had I known that information, it would have better equipped me when I went to my prenatal appointments to say, hey, I have a high risk, or I have history in my family of eclampsia. And that's when I knew that I must share, not only for me, not only for my sorors, not only for my friends, but for my own daughter.
Absolutely. Wow. It's just so touching. And again, we appreciate you being so open and sharing all of your stories with us. We do have a few questions that came in. We have a young woman that asks, what's the local health department's role in this issue? And that's coming from, I can't pronounce the name.
I think our role as a local health department, for those who don't know exactly what their health department does, is understanding where disparities lie, right? What are the health issues of the community that we are serving? And then understanding all of the different players, right? So we sit in a position where I interact with the hospitals, I interact with primary care providers, we interact with social service institutions, we interact with community-based organizations, and we interact with the community. So our ability to convene people around an issue or to share information on, this is what we're seeing, have you seen this, do you know about this, is something that we can do. In addition to really educating the public is a huge part of what we do in a number of different healthcare aspects, but making sure that people know what they can do, what the resources in their community are, understanding various health conditions, attending community events, having this information available to people. And some health departments also provide direct services, right? So some health departments may also be providing OBGYN services. We do not in Anne Arundel County, but that's also something that is within our scope and a role that we can play. And I think everyone has to play their role in this issue in order for us to make it better. We can't take a seat out and say, well, we don't control what happens in the hospital. We don't, but I can also work with my hospital partners to say, hey, what are you doing around this issue? What does your data look like? Is there anything we can do to help you? Are there advocacy efforts that we can take? We also do things like testify on legislation to say, hey, this is coming up. Who can speak to this? Should we be going out to speak to it or to have a voice, submitting letters to legislators and elected officials to let them know what the issues are? And so this is one where we invited our elected officials out to our listening sessions, and some of them come out to actually hear. I think it's important for them to know people's stories and how it's impacting the residents that they're supposed to serve. So I think there's a lot of ways for health departments to get involved in this issue, and many of them are in a lot of different ways.
Thank you. And that question was from, I believe it's Farouk is the name. I hope I didn't mess that up too terribly, but thank you so much for answering that question. We do have a young woman named Erica Farrell who chimed in. She says she had preeclampsia. Her daughter was born 1 pound, 2 ounces. Her heart goes out to TRASHAUN for sharing her story and hearing your story. She's saying that she will definitely join the research because if it was not for the doctors catching the preeclampsia, they both could have lost their lives. And it was a long journey of recovery for the both of them. So she thanks you, TRASHAUN, for sharing your story, and she's going to join in the fight. So we welcome you, Erica. Thank you so much. Again, the website is on the screen. So go to preeclampsia.org/registry to share your story. We also have P. Mitchell chiming in. It says that she too is a preeclampsia survivor as well. TRASHAUN, she says that you are the epitome of being a survivor. She said, thank you so much for choosing to be a part of the solution. She appreciates you. And we have a lot of people chiming in today. We want to say hello to Rolanda. She says, knowing your family's medical history is very helpful. And she says, thank you so much for pointing that out. So we have a lot of people joining in. And again, have people joining in the fight. They're answering the call, ladies, and we're happy about that, right? Absolutely, absolutely. Since everyone is loving you, TRASHAUN, we're going to talk to you again. Talk to us and let people know, the other people that are listening, and let them know how important it is, especially in the Black community, for them to participate in this research along with you, to join the fight, because you're here leading the charge.
Yeah. So we hear the horror stories. I can quote you the statistics. I believe Dr. Span said it earlier as well. We are 60% more likely to be diagnosed with preeclampsia and 3 times more likely to die from preeclampsia. Um, as a survivor, I'm one of those statistics, unfortunately. And those who are going through this are battling in silence. I was, when I lost a child, I actually had a woman from Georgia come to my Promise Walk here in Somerset, New Jersey, just to talk about her experience. And that's real. That is, it's very real. And when I say that it's real, how many people go into the hospital to have a baby and leave without one? It's a community that sadly no one wants to be a part of. I didn't even want to be a part of it, but I'm here. And so it's really important for Black preeclampsia survivors to really share their stories and really help to break down those barriers, and which is going to help also in fostering connections between the researchers and our communities. When you hear our stories, you connect with us. The researchers use that. They use it as a mechanism to develop ways to understand and develop healing, really, for our community. So that this doesn't continue to be ignored. But it's also important for Black survivors to be able to unleash themselves in saying, preeclampsia changed me. It changed my marriage, changed my community. It may have even impacted my ability to have additional children. And so being a part of research, it really empowers us as survivors to really be our own health advocate, to also be able to speak up when we see symptoms such as preeclampsia, and really not ignore our own bodies, because so often, we do that as Black women. We do that as women, that says, oh, it's just a headache. It's fine. But what we're doing at the Preeclampsia Foundation, and especially with the Take 10 program, is it's a community of survivors. And we're giving additional survivors, just like I believe Erica in the chat, thank you so much. We're giving you all the tools to take with you when you go to the doctor's office. And we're becoming that silent partner for our communities, for our sisters.
Thank you. And we have one more question coming in from Nuge Hartsfield. She says, what are some of the preventative measures that you could share with the community?
Yeah, Nuji, I will share some of the preventative measures. Really start with learning and really understanding the possible complications that can come with your pregnancy. And so if you're planning to get pregnant, to our listeners who are planning to get pregnant, talk to your doctor about your blood pressure levels, talk to your doctor about your weight, and also talk to your doctors about any other health issues that you may be having at the moment. Your history, your family's history is really important as well. And really learning the signs and symptoms of preeclampsia and not ignoring them. Okay. The last thing I will say is also talking with your mother and other women in your family about their medical history and birth experiences. I think it's really important for us to start having those conversations early enough, so that we're well aware and equipped when we go to our first prenatal appointment to know what's in our family.
Absolutely. The Juice Defined says, thank you for the information. It's so very important. Thank you for sharing your story, TRASHAUN. And Cassie Brisbane says, great talk. She says she wants to be included. Please let her know how she can be involved in the initiative. So we want to thank everybody for just joining in. Thank everybody for listening. And again, joining as we ask everybody to answer the call. We appreciate you so much. In closing, TRASHAUN, I'll keep the question here with you. A lot of people are asking about sharing your stories. A lot of people are asking about, how difficult it is. But why do you think it's so hard to get Black women to kind of talk? What do you think the barriers are in particular for Black women? Do you think that we maybe go through a greater postpartum, like when we go through this process, is it just like we grieve harder? Is there something that you think is a little more challenging with Black women in particular that makes it so difficult for us to kind of come forward and share with others?
I think it's a plethora of things. What comes up for me at the moment is history. I mean, historically, we were left out of the conversation when it comes to research. We were left out of the conversation in sharing. I think as Black people, or sometimes in our culture, is just what goes on in the house stays in the house, right? But that's not always good. And again, when I think about history, they didn't ask us. They didn't explain to us what was happening. And because of this, we've heard the horror stories. We've heard of the unethical practices, but it's not only what was done to us as a people, but it's what we do to ourselves when we don't share with our loved ones. Like I said about my great-great-grandmother dying in childbirth, had I known that, I may not have even had that experience.
Right.
But again, we often are holding our own stories. We're not sharing our stories, our own pain, and we're holding that in us. And one of the slogans for the Preeclampsia Foundation's Take 10 program is no greater story that we hold is an agony. And I think it's really important for us to be able to unleash that for the next generation, for my sister, for my own daughter, so that she's equipped with the tools to be able to have the conversations with her healthcare providers, and to be able to share that I know my mom has had HELP syndrome. My mom has become an advocate to ensure that no mom or baby ever has to go through what I had to go through when I went to the hospital being pregnant, but left out with a teddy bear and some sympathy flowers.
Right. There it is. Dr. Gedin, as we're here trying to increase Black representation in medical research, and we're here trying to get people to join the fight, what significant research has been done to kind of help us have a better outcome? Because we are in the middle of a Black maternal health crisis. I think you mentioned that earlier here in the U.S. So, like, for Black moms and for Black babies, what significant research has been done?
Yeah, I'll touch on this a bit, and then I think Dr. Spann will definitely be able to expand on this one. But there have been studies to show provider types matter, right?
Okay.
That infants in the NICU, and this one was particularly relevant to me, as my twin daughters spent about 3 months in the NICU after their birth, are more likely to survive if their provider is Black, right? And that's startling, but it also lets you know that there's more to this. And so understanding what the inputs are that lead to these outcomes. And I think it's important to know it is multifactorial, right? Your health when you become pregnant is important. Where's the starting line for people? Right. Understanding your family history, understanding your risk factors, having an education on what potential complications could be, and most importantly, signs and symptoms of something going wrong. Right? When is it time to call? When is it time to go for more? And I think we just need more. We need more research specifically on all of these things. For me, and the way that I do my job in accessing the research and trying to understand what's out there, when you go to look for what are the community-based interventions that have led to better outcomes, you see things like the participation of doulas in the birthing process, having support people, having ways to report if something is going wrong, where the power dynamic between the medical provider, the medical community, and that patient, how can you neutralize that somewhat so that people feel that their voice can be heard, or they know what to say if they feel like they're not getting the care that they should. And so I think there are a couple of different things that we see at a community level, but how do you increase? And I think doulas are a wonderful way to both expand people's knowledge, but provide that support for them through the birthing process. I think one of the unfortunate things is oftentimes it's difficult, like who has access to a doula is sometimes based on where you live, your economic status, and whether or not you can afford one, whether or not your insurance company will pay for that. But there are things that we can do, and research has shown that there are outcomes that can be improved by increasing some of those interventions in the community. But I will also defer to Dr. Spann.
Okay. Dr. Spann, same question.
Yeah, so I just wanted to piggyback. I think these community partnerships are really important. I know our university and the Department of OBGYN actually, has a really sort of large grant right now where there's multiple community partners that are really trying to answer this call of prevention by knowledge and information. And, embedded in that is a doula program. There's national nurse programs, right, where, pregnant persons, can, in certain, parts of the U.S., will have access to a nurse through this program that can really provide sort of that medical knowledge and information if they feel like, they need sort of additional supports that, may not be able to happen in sort of that shorter clinic visit. And I think, the other piece is really trying to support researchers that are also diverse. One of the things we know is, sort of, I am kind of, a unicorn and a bit unusual in the sense that there's like 3%, of Black individuals that, actually sort of reach this level of faculty and that continue on to have, achieve independent grants from the National Institute of Health, for example, which is the major granting organization that's particularly oriented to medical conditions. And so, it's sort of an interaction of really sort of the whole community kind of coming and together, to increase the number of participants in the studies, the number of individuals doing the research, and the interaction and engagement with the community to make sure that, we are sort of serving the community in the way that, we should be.
Okay. All right. And as we wrap up today, we have so many people again that have chimed in and joined us and answering the call because again, we're here to have that discussion with the community. What do you hope that the people watching today will take away from this discussion? I'll start with you, Dr. GEDIN, first.
I hope that people find a way to get involved, right? Especially if you're in a position where you can assist with this cause, but everyone should get involved. I think also if you're planning on getting pregnant, if you're currently pregnant, really educating yourself on the complications and the symptoms of what can happen, right? So that you know how to describe that to your provider, and that people also take the time to advocate for themselves, which is not always easy. And I actually had a woman tell me at one of the listening sessions, well, why do I have to do that? Why is the onus on me? And unfortunately, because Black women are dying at a higher rate, some of that onus has to, at least for now, until we can make more changes with the system, please advocate for yourself, ask all the questions, take the time to learn as much as you can and reach out to others, and also know your family history. I think Ms. Powell is absolutely correct in understanding what has happened and what could potentially happen to you.
TRASHAUN.
Thank you so much, Dr. GEDIN. I wholeheartedly agree with you. Where do I even start? I wanted to really focus on the Take 10 campaign for Preeclampsia Foundation. It really, if I can do a shameless plug here, it takes a multi-pronged approach in reaching women to raise awareness for preeclampsia, empowering them to be their own advocates by monitoring their bodies, knowing their numbers, motivating them to share their stories. We also partner with organizations like Black Women for Positive Change, Reclaiming Black Motherhood, the Association for Black Cardiologists, and even Radio One to promote awareness and action in amplifying our voices in research. We've also started organizing gathering table events. And I failed to mention that is that we're organizing gathering table events in major cities around the country, like Chicago, Atlanta, and the Washington, D.C. area. And what I'll say there is when I talked about sharing our stories, a lot of times we share our stories in the kitchen, around the table, and that is what the gathering table is really about. It's really a collective of women coming together to share our pain, to share our successes, to share our promises so that we can be the change that we want to see and moving preeclampsia to a thing of the past.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you. And Dr. Spann, to close us out, your thoughts.
Well, I won't do it justice. But just really sort of echoing and encouraging people to really get involved in research and really be open to having conversations with your doctor. You know your body best.
Thank you so much. Again, we appreciate you all and thank you so much for watching Answer the Call, Increasing Black Representation in Medical Research. Brought to you by the Bureau's Welcome Fund, along with Urban One and the Preeclampsia Foundation and Anne Arundel County Health Department. We hope that the discussion today kind of helped you, raise awareness and started the discussion, because we need to increase the Black experience in medical research is something that we have to do. So we need to have more discussions and have them aimed at diseases and disorders that are directly affecting minority populations, including preeclampsia research. And so we want to thank our panelists for joining us today. Again, Dr. TONII GEDIN with the Anne Arundel County Health Department. We have Dr. SPANN here, MARISA SPANN from Herbert Irving, Associate Professor, along with Columbia University and Vagelos College of Physicians and Surgeons. And finally, we have TRASHAUN Powell. She is a preeclampsia survivor. She shared her story with us today. We thank you so much again for sharing your story. She's also an ambassador for the Preeclampsia Foundation and the Take 10 for preeclampsia research, and she's a maternal health advocate. We want to thank all of our panelists here today. I've been so pleased and honored to be your host. I am Asia Chandler. I'm an on-air personality with Urban One. And again, we thank you for just allowing us to be here today to help us start the conversation, because the conversation is not finished. We want you all to please continue to amplify your voices. Please talk. Open up those lines of discussions. Open up the lines of communication, okay? And take 10 minutes to share your childbirth stories with researchers by joining the Preeclampsia Registry today. Just go to www.preeclampsia.org/registry to share your story. Again, that's preeclampsia.org/registry. Okay, amplify your voices. We need to have those discussions, right? Ladies, before we go, would you like to share how people, if they need to reach out to you, if they could do so? Dr. Gedin, do you have a point of contact?
Yeah, absolutely. If folks would like to reach out to me, you can find all of my contact information on aahealth.org. Also, if you're interested in sharing your story, if you go to aahealth.org/listen, we are still collecting information, and you can see some of the data related to maternal and infant health outcomes there. But we'd love to hear from you. If you're an Anne Arundel County resident and you want to tell us about your birthing experience, we welcome that. Also, the phone number is listed there, 410-222-7095 is how you can reach us.
I love that. TRASHAUN, how could they follow you on social media if they want to talk to you a little bit more?
Yes, definitely follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube at expecting.excellence. And on here is linking down for you to join the registry. So yes,
Okay.
Connect with me, but also join the registry at preeclampsia.org/registry.
I love that. And Dr. SPANN, do you have any social media or anything that they want to reach out to you for?
The name of my lab is the Early N3 Lab, but otherwise Columbia University's website, type my name.
There you go. All right. You can follow me at Always Ask Asia on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Again, that's Always Ask Asia. Again, I'm so pleased and honored to have been your host. I'm Asia Chandler with Urban One. Until we meet again, we want you all to stay blessed and continue to answer the call, continue to have the discussion, because we need to increase Black representation in medical research. So thank you again for joining us and watching Answer the Call.